Hi, I'm Derek, creator of TinyGrooveCS, and I'm coming at you here with the second mission in the campaign that follows where we pick up last time with Nuru, and follows her on an interesting journey related to her continued survival after her ship crash lands due to a volcanic ash storm. TinyGrooveCS stands for crowdsourcing, but also has some computer science elements in it, since those are the types of courses that I teach. I build computer models for a living, so I have a lot of fun programming these types of things in my spare time as well. And the last element to this is campaign support. A lot of you that watch these types of videos are particularly interested in adding unique elements to your own campaigns, and so we kind of dig, as I say, under the hood of what's going on behind the extremely powerful WarGroove editor. So with that, I'm going to go on ahead and dig into what is happening in TinyGrooveCS in the second mission. But since this is meant to be a community project, and I've incorporated ideas from many of you that have posted on Reddit and through the YouTube channel where I posted the previous video, here are some perspectives from individuals that have helped create the campaign so far with their ideas. So I'll turn it over to them, so I'm not the only talking head you hear from in this video.
Hi everybody, it's Bat, and today I want to talk about WarGroove. Some video games have large communities around them, and WarGroove is certainly one of the best examples we got around. With a ton of user-generated content, new custom campaigns, puzzles, scenarios, WarGroove can keep you busy for years and years. Derek, the prolific creator of TinyGroove and TinyGroove TV, contacted the community on Reddit and Discord to share his new project, TinyGrooveCS. What is TinyGrooveCS? TinyGrooveCS stands for crowdsourcing, and the idea is to have the community at large suggesting ideas about the story, about the gameplay, about the different mechanics, to build a unique experience of WarGroove collectively. I love this idea, and I was one of the persons really suggesting ideas. Due to that, Derek contacted me and said if I wanted to talk about Mission 2, which I would gladly do so. So I played the alpha version of TinyGroove, so things may change compared to what he used, but I think the backbone will probably stay the same. In the story of TinyGroove, Nuru crash-landed with her ship and her crew, a spaceship. The story is way less medieval and way more sci-fi than usual, giving advanced war Days of Ruin kind of feeling. It works very well, and with the crash landing of the ship, they are scraping for building back the parts that will help them living back on this planet. On the way, they will have to survive and get by, find food, shelter, and trying to survive until they're ready to leave. The second mission trying to solve the problem of food. They see some buildings in the far with food in it, and those buildings are controlled by the undead who don't need the food, but they're not ready to share with Nuru. So only way to resolve this particular conflict is war. So you will have to invade the city of the undead in order to gain control over the food, preserve and survive. Not to survive. I really love the mission because you start with a pre-deployed team of units that you will have to keep alive. So the trade game is totally different because your enemy has Barracks on their own, so they don't play with the same kind of rules as you. On the way, as soon as you will start to control a certain number of buildings, you will get access to movable barracks. What are those barracks? Well, we saw them in the first mission of TinyGrooveCS, and they come back in TinyGroove second mission. And those movable barracks are very powerful. They can move like a wagon, and you can position them in the place you want. And they're very convenient to actually bring a building that can work as a reserve of life points, or block the path of the enemy, or just being able to spawn units just on the front lines. So there is a whole dynamic around those buildings that is very interesting, and I hope to see this mechanism being used in other missions of TinyGrooveCS. It has so much potential. On another note, you're also limited in the number of units you're allowed to deploy. 5 of each kind, of the basic kind, swords, spears, and bowmen. So the whole trade game is still stay very different even with the barracks, because you will only be able to produce a certain number of spears, and I've found it very fantastic. Last but not least, it's not just a straight up conflict on this map. There are actually 4 players, or 3 of them controlled by the computer. It really has the dynamic of a free-for-all with all the mess that we have around it. A little spin on the free-for-all system is that if you give the final blow to any players, they will join your rank. So compared to a free-for-all where the dynamic balance out, that you really don't want to be the one giving the final blow because you're wasting your units, your activation on, and you prefer the opponent to do it. Here you really want to actually beeline for the commander of your opponent and kill them as fast as possible to grow the ranks of your army. It's very interesting, works wonderfully well, and I wonder if the general free-for-all mechanism in WarGroove wouldn't benefit of something slightly similar, providing a more dynamic conflict. Overall, I had so much fun playing this mission. Between the main objective, the side missions, there's so many layers in those tailor-made, very intricate and detailed missions that Derek is producing. He's the master of the engine, really. He makes also videos to explain how he implemented every single concept that is actually at play for the missions. So it's also a great educational content if you do want to generate your own thing for WarGroove. And I was very glad to play it before the final release. Because there's so many different ways of playing those missions that I can totally see myself making a 3rd or 4th playthrough of TinyGrooveCS. Replayability factor is really front and center in all of Derek's design, but even more in this TinyGrooveCS. And I find it fantastic to be able to play it now and being able to provide feedback and to know that you brought your little stone to this marvelous project and contribute in any way of making TinyGrooveCS one of the best campaigns of WarGroove. This was that. I hope you want to play the campaign now or give it a try. You can find it now, and have a good day. Happy playing!
We, along with Greenfinger in the top left-hand corner and the Outlaws in the bottom right-hand corner, and then Sigrid's main base over the lava in the back end of the map, kind of corner this city in the middle of the map. But then it turns out that Sigrid has basically deployed a bunch of crystals in the middle of the map, and that really has kind of functionally behaved 2 different ways. You can see this huge highlighted field in the middle of the map, and the reason why that's there is to let you know, hey, there's a load of crystals here in the middle of the map. And Tech Ops concurs that, yeah, this is probably not going to be any cakewalk, because she's deployed 8 crystals in the middle of the city, and they appear here in the heads-up display here as purple as our kind of side quest, along with defeating Sigrid as a blue arrow that will appear on her turn and track her movements moving forward. Try not to overwhelm the player with too many different options, but naturally, if we're trying to get to this crash site that's towards this central barracks in this map, we're going to have to take some time to find a way to get there. So we probably need to capture some production structures. And capturing our first hideout will allow us to recruit more thieves, and thieves are critical because with all these crystals here, it's going to be very difficult to conventionally destroy a lot of these structures and capture them for ourselves. But since thieves can one-shot any enemy structure, this now makes them extremely valuable because these crystals do an amazing job at protecting the structures and any of Sigrid's units inside of the city. And since it's a free-for-all, you'll see Greenfinger's units and others also attacking the city with you. So it's not going to be a Herculean task to take down the city, but it is made much easier by the thieves. And that was really what I was going for here, was I wanted to feature the new units. Much like Mission 1 in TinyGrooveCS, really heavily featured the utility of the long-range sharpshooters. This time we're focusing quite a bit more on the thieves. And they do an awesome job of really ignoring the armor that are added or afforded by these structures and allowing the player to kind of introduce some new game dynamics in terms of capturing large numbers of properties in this central city. And so now we've got our war wagons that are introduced. TinyGrooveCS kind of follows the background of Nuru from TinyGroove, which is able to build these like massive cities that kind of incorporate mobile construction vehicles, and they can pack up and be repacked in different places in the later missions of TinyGroove. So this is kind of canon for that particular series. But what's interesting about this is that she's got almost every production structure in her arsenal is capable of moving, and so this map introduces a new unit we'll see later on, but for now, capturing one hideout allows us to basically cause other production structures that were damaged during the crash nearby to come online. And so now we can capture 2 more hideouts to get another war wagon. We were just given 1 for capturing 1. We'll get a second when we capture 2, and as you might have guessed, there are 6 hideouts on the map highlighted in yellow. We're going to get a third one if we capture all of them. But of course, by that point, it's probably a little too late, as we should presumably have control of the map by the time we've captured all 6 hideouts. But there's some unique things that happen on this map that may not necessarily be true, depending on how you choose to play the game. And that's the goal, is really to kind of introduce this in a way that players have a lot of different play styles they like to do when they approach these types of games. And my goal is to accommodate as many of them as possible so that this is fun for players of all skill levels to enjoy. And if you're particularly not great at tactical games, but really just like being able to play through some fun and dynamic storylines, of course you can always adjust the difficulty if this is too tough for you, or this playthrough video will basically show you what happens if you don't want to play it yourself, or if you do want to play it yourself and you keep getting stuck at a certain point. Here's some pretty useful hints that can kind of help you guide your progress through playing these types of campaigns. So I'm going to move forward because I know I'm going to put Nuru on the other side, and if this guy up here decides to haphazardly attack, my soldier at least will have the critical on the defense. And already you can see that one of the crystals has been destroyed up here. Greenfinger's units got to it pretty quick. This doesn't always happen, it just kind of depends on how Greenfinger moves their units. And since I went right, they also decided to go right with the enemy's AI over here. And you'll now realize that this introduces another main quest when we see these vines. Nuru's so hungry, she's saying, dang, it would be great to eat those vines. There's some sustenance in there. And so TAC Ops immediately suggests, hey, you better find the source of those vines. There's roughage to consume up there. So you'll see my goal with this is to kind of give it kind of a space age sort of vibe with a tactical operations computer guiding battle control. And so in this particular game, you'll see that there's lots of stuff that will constantly update you on what your different mission directives are, because unlike the regular campaign in WarGroove or even in TinyGroove, there's usually only 1 or 2 goals. In this game there are several, and since there are myriad options that can be completed in any order behind the game's coding, that means it has to consider every possible order that the players could potentially complete those tasks, which means you're going to be updating the mission objectives a lot of times for every possible combination, saying they complete objective 6, 7, 8, or 9 in a particular order. In this particular campaign, that's exactly what happens, whether you decide to defeat Sigrid first, destroy all the crystals in the city, decide to fell Greenfinger, and ultimately it will help him join your army, which is kind of what they're explaining here in the directions down below. But also it kind of breaks down a little bit further what influence Sigrid has over the control of the crystals. So what's kind of interesting about this is you're trying to make your way to the center of the city to scavenge the crash site, is that, before you try to roll in, TAC Ops gives this cryptic warning saying, hey, the bandwidth of the control signals that are sent from your downed or crashed spaceship that makes these mobile construction vehicles move around, like our mobile barracks. War Wagon becomes a battle barracks at the end of every movement. You can pay 300 gold to move it again by recruiting a wagon and pack it up, but he's saying, hey, maybe you don't want the structure there to land in the middle of this space by the end of the day, because anything that's within a phase field of a crystal will stop it from unpacking. And that's actually very difficult to program, because there is nothing in the editor that says, hey, within the field of a crystal, which means we have to do some complicated in geographic information systems, what we would call map algebra. In this case, it's manipulating some of the Boolean logic related to any of the location settings. So we use a manipulation of differences between individual overlapping areas, since these crystals do overlap, and try and use that information to break down exactly what is happening. And also this turn, you'll see a bunch of highlighted spaces here, and that's because volcanic ash is falling. They kind of explain in the background. There's a somewhat random weather pattern that's provided, and so we want to avoid those spaces where there are debris falling on the map. So my goal is to get Nuru a little bit closer to the middle of the map while still protecting her with my units. And we've got another wagon here, and so just to kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about, you can kind of see the phase fields of these crystals here being encouraged upon on all sides, but they're pretty aggressive and left themselves very open for me to attack them. So if I move this into the range of any of these crystals phase fields, for example, I can move this up here. It's probably not the best idea, but if I put it right here on the edge of the field, you'll see that the wagon doesn't unpack, and Nuru is kind of disappointed about that because, TAC Ops' cryptic warning didn't fully explain that, hey, the phase field does kind of block the unpacking signal from the spaceship, and that's why we can't actually use them. And this is kind of her military's first time learning that, hey, this cool technology that gave us a massive tactical superiority on the battlefield can be neutralized by the enemy, and that kind of stinks. So, that's always kind of fun when you're talking about an arms race associated with these games. Not fun in true military tactics, because there's, your life on the line. But in this survival feel of this kind of game, it's really kind of interesting to be introduced to new concepts. And the WarGroove editor is totally capable of accommodating all of those things. And so that's why TinyGrooveCS stands for computer science, is that you're kind of using some logic that's involved here. I moved my unit up here realizing fully that it's probably going to die, but mostly because Greenfinger in the new version can now move his vines out of the way and accommodate a new path for us if I block on this side. But this now introduces us to Greenfinger. Once you see him, the trigger for that will activate and says, hey, who are you that are desecrating this forest that's already very feeble as it is? But Nuru immediately makes it evident that, hey, can you help us out? We're very hungry, and it seems like you can create those vines at will. And Greenfinger, views this more as cannibalism. He's like, he just created those things. They're part of him. Why would you want to eat part of him? And so there's ideological disagreements. As a result, he says, get out of the forest. We're just like those Felheim vagabonds, and he's likening us to Sigrid the vampire, who also seems to eat people or plants or whatever. So as a result, he chases us out of the forest, and we've now made an enemy of Greenfinger as well. But TAC Ops immediately assesses the behavior of him versus the units and says, hey, you probably just offended Greenfinger, not necessarily his whole army. They might maybe understand that we're starving and really want some food, and his vines look delicious. And they do. They really do. So the goal here is mostly we could try and defeat Greenfinger, at which point it seems like his army would side with us, which is why it says subdue instead of defeat. If we defeat Greenfinger, immediately his entire army will convert to our control. And also, coincidentally, Greenfinger comes back and, kind of sees that, hey, we understand that you're in a tight spot. We probably can help you out. So, again, trying to avoid some volcanic ash. Hope there's no enemy that's hidden on this side. That is the danger with Fog of War, is that unlike games like Advance Wars, you can totally get stuck, because in this case, with WarGroove, you cannot stand in or on structures, which means your turn is abruptly ended with death if you get stuck on a structure as you try to pass through it when you can't see the other side in Fog of War settings. So with that, I get close to ending my turn, but I really would rather capture some structures, but need to make it safer for Nuru that has kind of put herself in harm's way up ahead. And so now the next unit, I guess, that I could build something over here, and why not? Let's build ourselves a sneaker. And trying to figure out if I wanted to send him up to the top left-hand side of the map. I've had some success playing through this way before, but you notice that I've gotten all my units out of these spaces except for this one. Mostly just to show that, yeah, it took 30% of its life and damage, as TacOps said, but also it's introduced this new burn mechanic. Mostly it's capable with some of the new settings that Chucklefish has added related to how much damage units take over time by manipulating it to say, hey, take 100% damage from all sources, to now it says take 130% damage from all sources. For any units that are stuck in these burn fields, like Greenfinger's Vine that's stuck right here, we're going to pay attention to this one above the crystal and see if we can hit that one next turn. It's going to be kind of tough to do because there's a lot of stuff here. But if there was somehow a way for me to demonstrate how I could get to that particular unit, that would be nice, since I can't attack with this guy, to show you how much damage he would take as a counterattack. I'm going to move my thieves closer to my hideout. And honestly, it makes more sense to stay in the protected areas, since there's more volcanic fallout coming the next day, we can see on our forecast. So I'm going to move a little bit closer up here, since Greenfinger seems to be pushing right instead of south. I'm going to exploit that and keep moving forward. And I'm going to move up here and try and take out some of Greenfinger's structures. I mostly just want to eliminate his production structures. I'm not so concerned about anything else there. And yeah, I'm going to recruit another thief, because that is kind of the name of the game here, but we still need to make sure that our army's not so unbalanced that we can't protect ourselves. So now that I've kind of shown that the crystal's phase field, so I park right outside of it, no problem, deploys into a battle barracks, and we can start recruiting units next turn. I can always recruit another wagon to move it at any time, but I'm all good for now. We're going to move up this way. And Newer's Groove is ready, so I would teleport in a new unit, but I forget it's costs double. Didn't used to at the beginning of the game, but for some reason I'm still trying to get used to a thing that's been in the game for more than 6 months. That it costs lots of money to recruit things for Newer. So I'm going to attack this structure over here and at least force a Sigrid to relinquish control from one more structure, because she had a lot of buildings, which means she's got a lot of flying units up in this top right hand corner that are ultimately going to be harassing the outlaws, the first folks that are there in range, which is why you see their turns usually end up being so short. So now it's Greenfinger's turn, and he is doing an amazing job of just wrecking Sigrid on the north end of this map, and that's mostly because I spent a lot of time balancing this battle so that it's not just you trying to attack Sigrid, which I control like nearly 20 structures at the beginning of the map. Now it's made it at least a little bit easier for us to kind of overwhelm her. I mean, she still has control of the barracks in the middle of the map, but the other things that I should mention is that this volcanic ash I didn't talk about too much the first time it came through, but it's based on a randomization function, and the things that are happening behind the scenes here is the beginning of the battle. It kind of picks a schema, one of 3 different options, and basically that affects the relative cycle of the days that you're seeing that the ash is falling from the sky. And there are 2 different things that can happen when the weather in the top right hand or top left hand corner of the map tells you that the weather is going to be volcanic ash falling from the sky that day. This is your equivalent of severe weather. You can see now a lot of the storm seems to be clustered to the top left, and that's because I have used basically just one of 2 different combinations of patterns for ash falling, and then used the move XY coordinates options. There's a new function that's been added called move, and instead of moving it to a unit or a location, which were previously the only 2 options, you can now move it just by saying up, down. Of course, the directions affected by negative or positive will give you the directions you want, and you can see in this particular instance that we have clustered towards the top left-hand side of the map this time for the volcanic ash, which means it's going to be really tough to dodge these, but also there's some things that can't get out of the way, like structures. For example, our structure here, unfortunately, we can't get it out of the way, but it has also been removed from our control. It is on a highlighted space. So actually I'm going to move this unit first, just to make sure I don't put it in the path of the ash. And Sigrid's units have actually hit us. We don't want to attack this guy because volcanic ash will hit us on all sides there. So